Okay. Lucy, Brenton?
Yep, Brenton. I've got some information sheets for each of you.
Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Doing great.
Better than I deserve, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, so I'm not a veteran of these things. Should I stand here, stand back there?
Go ahead and sit at the table and talk
Okay.
into the microphone.
All right. I got a big mouth. You can probably hear me without that.
Right.
Okay. Ooh, that's very loud. So my name is Lucy Brenton. I've been in Washington County for about 3 years and moved down here with my husband and 10 children because I love the conservative values that are in Washington County, and I wanted to raise my children in a way that was more natural and be able to have a farm instead of being stuck in the city. Along with raising my children that way is my concern, as you just mentioned today with CDC guidelines, that our health and medical liberty is in danger. That there are organizations who, for profit, want to make sure that they can control our daily lives and make a profit for themselves. Things like mandatory vaccination, where those products are mandatorily purchased and then foisted upon an unsuspecting citizenry, and then all that money kind of goes up the funnel to politicians and to corporations. So the most recent threat that we have here in Indiana is something that, again, seems like a great idea, but it's a Trojan horse, and that is the Governor's Public Health Commission, known as Public Health 911. So I've given you each an information sheet from Hoosiers for Medical Liberty. I don't represent them, but I think they're an amazing 501c4 organization. So they're trying to do the right thing and alert Hoosiers to the hidden dangers of what's coming down. So the Governor's Public Health Commission was instituted in 2021 through an executive order, which I am never in favor of executive orders, by Governor Holcomb to address public health in Indiana. The commission first met in September of 2021, outlining key areas of public health, including emergency preparedness, governance and structure, funding, data and information integration, healthcare and public health workforces, and childhood and adolescent health integration. Monthly meetings drive the goal to help develop regionalized, equitable, and sustainable legislative recommendations for public health to be presented during the 2023 session. Again, this all sounds great, right? We want to protect public health. But generally, public health efforts are considered altruistic in nature because the focus is to prevent illness, injury, and extend the lifespan. Unfortunately, as we've recently learned in the last 2.5 years through COVID, the guise of public health can be used to control and limit the freedoms granted by our Constitution. Not all of the recommendations that were offered by the Governor's Public Health Commission appear dangerous. In fact, they have a marketing program, public relations, if you will, that says that they want to improve emergency medical services and disaster preparedness, data portability and removing barriers to care, to meet the needs of the underserved and underprivileged, and of course increase public health funding. On the face, this all sounds absolutely amazing. It sounds like Daddy Government is here to make sure that we're all taken care of and that it's equitable and sustainable. The problem is, like Benjamin Franklin said, that those who give up a little bit of they give up all of their for a little bit of security, they're going to lose both and they deserve neither. So the specific threats that we're concerned with are centralization, first of all. Government power becomes top-down rather than bottom-up. The CDC makes recommendations just like you adopted today. It passes that down to the state, and the state tells the county what to do. There's no diversity, no county input or accountability to citizens. I want those of you sitting here with me to be the ones that are involved at the local level. You're the county commissioners. It's your job to make sure that you stand between us and the state and federal governments to ensure the individual liberties of each of us living here in Washington County. It disconnects local accountability. Health commissioners' hands are tied because if they deviate from the centralized recommendations, they jeopardize their funding. So this is why masks were instituted, even though they're ineffective. This is why the lockdowns were instituted. It's absolutely crazy that Walmart stayed open, but our cafe across the street had to close down. It was an entire huge wealth transfer that took small mom and pop businesses that contributed to the community, that kept the money here in Washington County, and instead transferred all of that money to globalist corporations who lack accountability, and in fact act as bullies around the world, destroying the environment. Schools are a perfect example that's related to ESSR funding. If the school accepts ESSR funds, they were required to meet certain expectations to open. The emotional trauma that was inflicted upon even my children who attend West Washington schools is insane. The people who had children that were, maybe not as liberal as me and kept my children home rather than having them go to school wearing a mask and being afraid, that kind of emotional trauma, one of my friends who's a teacher said, we now have third graders that are really first graders. And so children have been severely affected by this. This is all coercive. It's taking away our individual liberties to live our lives here in Washington County. If we don't participate in the program as a county, the county is ineligible. We are not eligible for any Indiana Department of Health funding, including grants. So that means that we as a county would then have to fund those public health initiatives that we want, which I'm all in favor of actually, because with those funds from the state and federal level comes handcuffs. Data integrations increase data sharing between local, state, national, and even global organizations. Our state already has a vaccine registry, for example, and shares that information with the national registry. You are automatically enrolled, but you're never told that. So even though I opted out of CHIRP, I know that even though I opted out and I showed up with my daughter for a sports physical, they came to me to ask why she wasn't vaccinated. She should not be in that database at all. I opted out. So even though we're told that we can opt out of these data collection, it's clear that they do that in spite of our protests. Schools, doctors' offices, and the State Department of Health have access to your vaccination record, your contact information, and address. I mean, really, how much information do you want the government to have access to? I want zero. The hidden threat of school clinics, decreasing the role of parent, more of your students' information exchanged and shared. I am a traditional mom, married 32 years with 10 kids. I want my children protected from the kind of medical tyranny that is literally putting a school system, now this is not happening in West Washington, I've talked with them, but there are people that would encourage my child to kill my grandchild. If I were in a different school system, and this is why we moved here, there are people who would transport my child to have my grandchild killed, and I wouldn't know anything about it. There are people that would put my child on chemicals like birth control or estrogen or testosterone, depending upon the cross-gender thing. So I'm here as a citizen to enlist your aid, to work as a partner with you, to make sure that we here in Washington County stand up to the juggernaut of the federal and state government and say, we will not allow our Washington County citizens to have handcuffs put upon them, to have masks forced upon them. We will not allow the federal or the state government to come in and say, you don't get your public health money unless and until you go along with our program, and that means putting Washington County citizens at risk. Thank you. Oh, do you want to ask me any questions? Do I have any time left?
I have one quick question.
Yes, sir.
Just one. You said the governor's public health commission. So as of right now, what you're saying is he's basically trying to do this through executive order. Is there anything, or have you spoken with any of our local legislators about your concerns? And I do share some of your concerns. Have you spoken to any of this? Is there legislation going through the state level referencing any of this? Or?
That is a great question. I'm so glad that you asked. It started with the executive orders, and of course, time after time after time, Holcomb, the rhino, locked us down and prevented all kinds of things from happening. But right now, it's a commission on public health. They're making recommendations for new laws. I don't know a specific bill that I can give you a number to, but I appreciate the suggestion. To take it to our local House and Senate representatives. Part of their plan is to have government-funded school clinics that offer screenings and care. That sounds great on the surface until it becomes coercive and tied to public funds. And that asks me, that makes me ask myself, who's going to have access to each of our children's records? Not everyone that is a pastor is a good person. Not everyone that's a politician or a teacher or anything. They can still be evil or they can still be good. Just the fact that they go into a certain job doesn't automatically make them trustworthy. So just because somebody is a teacher at my child's school doesn't mean that they should have access to that sort of private information about my child's health care. I'm concerned that they might provide vaccines. There are lawsuits in Los Angeles County right now because there is a pizza party that was given for children who would accept the COVID vaccine. So we had 13-year-olds who were offered a piece of pizza in exchange for a life-changing injection that we know now can affect their fertility and actually make them more susceptible to things like COVID and other autoimmune disorders. Are they going to try and offer contraception or abortion or hormones? Maybe not at West Washington, but I'm pretty active there. What if that could be happening at Salem or East? We just don't know. And so it's up to us to stand up individually and do that. So I will definitely, talk to our local legislators, and make sure that that we're fighting it here. I did have a question for you guys. Oh, very simple question. If the state dangles the carrot in front of you as county commissioners, would it be your intention to go ahead and accept that money even if you have to give up the rights of the individual citizens in this county? Is that a bargain?
We have no way of answering that, because when you say dangle a carrot, there's nothing in writing. So the only thing we can do, I appreciate you bringing all this to our attention, and we'll stay on top of it. And I think the main thing is to keep in touch with our state legislators, because they're the ones that ultimately would be responsible for this, unless the governor decides to come up with some executive order. But
well, that's a really great question, because my understanding of constitutional law is that our county sheriff and our county commissioners, that we are the highest law in our county, and that we can kick out the state and federal governments when they breach and overreach, trying to take away our individual rights. Is that? I mean, that's my understanding.
Well, to a point, but we have very little wiggle room, actually. People get a misconception about counties, think we can do anything we want, but we have very little wiggle room. I might suggest maybe that you talk to someone at the health department, and ask if they're aware. I'm sure they're aware of this, so I certainly appreciate you bringing this to our attention. We'll stay on top of it, and we do share a lot of your concerns. Because none of us, and I think I can speak for all of us, are real big on regulations. So
I'm glad to hear that. They talk about keep Portland weird and keep Austin weird. I want to keep Washington County free. And if we won't stand for freedom and individual liberty in the Constitution ourselves in this county, how can we expect our state legislators or federal legislators who are busy signing away our rights for their money to do that? Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick?